Hello and welcome to the Survivor edition of Spotlight. Today we are spotlighting some COVID-19 patients who have recovered, and we're going to be speaking to them about how they experienced the disease and everything associated with it. We also have a doctor in studio who's going to be speaking to some of these experiences. My name is Nwong Falong. As always, it's an honor to sit with you. We'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, I'll introduce you to our survivors.
Unique, contemporary, engaging. Introducing the ultimate talk show that captures, scrutinizes, and stirs up conversations around relevant content across the globe. We talk to the movers and shakers in the tech, youth entrepreneurship, creative arts industry, and many more. Join me, Kwame A. Opoku, usher you to the realm beyond the headlines, new tech releases, trends, and clicks. It's going to be a fun ride on MS Conversations.
Yes, guys, it's your girl, Miss Drew, your hostess with the mostest. I'll see you in the next moments.
Welcome back to Spotlight. As I mentioned before we went on the break, this is the Survivor edition because we're going to be speaking to survivors of the disease. And we also have a medical doctor in studio, Dr. Chris Owu. He's the head of ICU at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital and the Ghana Infectious Diseases Center. That's Dr. Chris Owu. He's going to be joining us via Zoom. We have a virtual audience throughout the show today. We also have Joe Jackson, CEO of Dalex Finance. Joe Jackson is a survivor. We have Kwame Kafui. He's going to be joining us. And then we have Madame Eliza Kofi. She's also a survivor, and she's going to be joining us to share her experience with COVID-19. Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hello to fellow survivors. Eliza, if you could turn your camera around because it looks upside down. Yes, so let me start with Mr. Joe Jackson. At what point did you know that you had COVID? At what point were you absolutely certain? Was it even before you tested, or did you test before you were certain that this is the situation?
Okay, I've actually always been worried about COVID because I had what the doctors call nicely comorbidities.
Oh, what's that?
Diabetic.
Okay.
Well, those are the underlying diseases that you have that makes it puts you a huge risk if you get COVID.
And we keep hearing about the most of the casualties are usually people with underlying diseases. This puts a lot of pressure on people with underlying diseases. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm diabetic. I've got high blood pressure. I'm obviously overweight.
Oh my goodness!
What they call obese. And then I have a history of heart disease.
Oh dear!
I've always been in a high risk factor. One of the things I decided as soon as I got to get a better understanding of what COVID was going to be about was to test often. So I did a test, and I was negative. But a week after testing, getting the results that I was negative, I got a dry cough.
Oh dear.
I started feeling feverish. There was this, what I call the old malaria feeling, where you got aches and pains in your bones. So then I went for another. So after 2-3 days, when this didn't pass, so my symptoms. I really recognized my symptoms on a Tuesday, and on Thursday I went for another COVID test. Thursday evening, and on Saturday morning it came out positive. So that's when I knew I had COVID.
So that took a while. Thursday you had the test, and then Saturday it came out, the results came out. But between Thursday and Saturday, that's a significant period of time. What did you immediately do? Any like first aid responses? What did you do?
I really did nothing. Before, first of all, you really don't go into the test thinking you have COVID. You still
You're hoping it's negative,
especially if you're at risk like I am. You tell yourself, I don't have it. I won't have it. In Jesus' name, I'm not going to have it. But hey, I was taking the zinc. I was taking the vitamin C, and that was what I was really doing, because that's what's been recommended as what you should do. So I was taking the zinc and the vitamin C, and then
getting very prayerful.
And then on Saturday, boom, the test comes up. I went for it at let-in. So they sent me an SMS and an email. I opened it, and it said positive.
Wow.
Then I started isolating.
Let's pause over there, and then I'm going to get to the submission of the others, and then we'll come back to that. Testing positive, especially when you're not. I mean, nobody wants to have COVID. Everyone is hoping against COVID, praying against COVID, trying to use different kinds of interventions. But then you get a test and it comes out positive. What do you do next? Let me go to Kwame Kafui. Are you on the line, Kwame? Hello, Kwame. It seems we're not able to. Kwame, can you unmute? Kwame, if you're there, can you just unmute yourself so we can hear you? All right, we're having some issues with Kwame there, so I'm just going to move to Madame Eliza Kofi. Madame, are you on the line?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We just heard from Mr. Joe Jackson, the period leading up to the test and him finding out he was positive. What was your process? How did you find out you had COVID? Were you certain before the test, or was it the test that confirmed to you?
Okay, so earlier my parents had been coughing and been showing all the signs. So right from day one, I didn't think I would get it, and I was the one taking care of them. So I took him. She was in the hospital. Both of them were admitted actually, and I came back to cook for them. I couldn't smell anything. I took the detergent to smell. I tried smelling everything, and I couldn't smell it. So the next day, I went to the doctor, and I told them that I think I have the virus because my parents already obviously have it. So I think I have it. So they took the test, and it came out positive.
How long did the test take to come back to you?
About 6-7 days.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a long time. In those 6-7 days, were there any interventions prior to that? Because you had been to the hospital.
Yes, honestly, I did self-medication.
Oh.
I went to the pharmacy to buy drugs.
How did you know what
And the
drugs to
doctor
buy?
also recommended. Okay, so I spoke to a doctor friend and he recommended azithromycin. So I went to buy azithromycin. I also steamed. I took neem trees, and yes,
Right.
basically that.
Right. I'll go on to Kwame Kafui, and then let's establish exactly how he got it. We don't have Kwame Kafui on the line. He's still experiencing some technical difficulties. So I'm going straight to Dr. Chris Owu. He's the head of ICU at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital and the Ghana Infectious Diseases Center. Hello, Dr. Chris. Dr. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Chris, one highlight which is important to note is that the results seem to take a while to come back. With Dr. Joe Jackson, he tested on Thursday. The results came back on Saturday. With Madame Eliza, she tested, and it took 6-7 days for the results to come back. But these are critical days. I mean, if you are to get any significant interventions, in these 7 days after you have been tested and you're still waiting, isn't this a dangerous phase to be without medication and be uncertain?
All right, so thank you very much. And that is true. The lag time between testing and when eventually the result comes, if it takes very long, is problematic. As we can remember, during the earlier wave, early last year, at some point in time, it was actually taking sometimes 2 weeks. Some people didn't get their result at all. Now, there's been expansion in testing facilities where, as against just 2 national testing facilities, mainly during the first wave, there are more than 10 of them nationally now in public facilities, and at least almost another 10 rolled in the last 2 months.
Dr. Chris, Dr. Chris, I don't mean to cut you, but these are quite recent infections.
Yeah.
What is the delay, first of all? And what do you do
so,
while you're waiting?
Yes, so that's exactly what I was coming to. So aside the fact that there are significantly increased testing centers, and both in public and private centers, part of the problem has been the way in which we test. Now, the same facilities are serving hospital-based requests as against people walking in, and of course, for those who are traveling. A number of these facilities are commercial and therefore have different timings to receive the results. I can tell you that some of those are actually able to give you results between 2 to 4 hours, depending on how much you pay for that. But the problem is if there are people who are going to hospital and requested by doctors, those pass through the public health system. And as much as possible, the lag time for those are shorter. It takes roughly between 24 to 72 hours, so basically 1 to 3 days to get your results.
Dr. Chris, again, I'm going to move in here, but not meaning to cut you. You said some of them can actually come back in a few hours, 3 to 4 hours, depending on how much you paid. Are we saying the quality of service is still largely dependent on how much you can pay?
No, so testing is not only public, it's also private. And these are private facilities. And we know that, and it's not only in Ghana, in every country. So one of the requests was to allow private centers to also engage in testing so that it could increase the availability to people
Just
who are
more
testing. And private facilities have been allowed to. And with private, I mean, that is basically business, if I may say so. It's like going to a lab, any lab anywhere, to request to test. It's as against people who are ill or have come to hospital and the doctor requests for a test, and those pass through the public health facilities, and those basically the situation. But from what Mr. Jackson and then Liza described, both of them basically walked into a private lab or basically to request for a test. As much as possible, I know that there are a lot of anxiety in the system. If I thought I had symptoms for COVID at the moment, I probably would want to test as soon as possible. But that's why we request that as much as possible, the public facilities, the private hospitals, and then the districts, if it passed through them, that goes to the public facilities. And then that's basically the system tries to get that through much more quicker. Now, of course, if you go to a private facility, I'm sure Mr. Jackson can tell you that when he went there, they told him how much it would be, depending on how long it would take him to get his test. I'm sure he would admit to that. And that is the situation. There are lots of people testing now, and even though we have increased the number of centers that are able to test. But does that solve the problem of the 3-day wait or the almost 1-week wait in the case of Eliza? No. And
because in this lag period, you know, this lag period could literally kill you.
Yes, it could. And we actually worried about that because, again, the health system is such that if you're sitting home and self-medicating without proper assessment, even if you do not feel very ill, that is dangerous. I'll give you examples. We've had examples of people who have tested their test. By the time it came, earlier on, they were totally fine. They called doctor friends, asked them, what should I get? And usually, yes, it's a friendly call. The person would say, get this, get that, vitamin C, zinc, and occasionally will ask you to add an antibiotic to it. Now, that is not equal to an assessment of a suspected or confirmed case. Even for those who have tested and their test has come positive, our advice is that there is a proper channel that you go through. Are these channels open in all hospitals? The answer is no. And again, that is our recommendation to most facilities. If you come to Gai's Municipal Hospital and the Ghana Infectious Disease Center, where I am at the moment, what did we do? We created a COVID OPD. So people can walk in, even when they are suspected. We will assess them, we will request for tests. Because we will take those tests, it becomes easier and they don't have to pay them for the tests. For those who get confirmed, they can walk into that COVID OPD. The same way for those who have recovered from COVID, we have a post-COVID clinic for them. Now, that is a recommendation that we make facilities to emulate because
I understand this recommendation, but as you're saying, some of these channels are not very active. Also, let's not forget that a lot of people are self-medicating because the turnaround time, medical turnaround time, is slow. And in that slowness, you are also scared because you're sitting at home without medication. You're waiting. You've not been confirmed yet. And once you've not been confirmed yet, I don't think any medical facility is going to treat you for COVID while you haven't been confirmed. So how are we going to stop people from self-medicating if the system is not turning around quickly enough?
Thank you. But actually, that is not really accurate. A lot of people are self-medicating even before they ever had any symptom. I know people who are taking azithromycin. As for the zinc and vitamin C, people are actively taking it almost for the
well, for Eliza's case, let's assume this is a rational case. In Eliza's case, for example, she had tested already, but the test results were not in yet. And then she, I mean, because I don't see why anyone would just get up without any symptoms and then start taking self-medicating. That is definitely dangerous. But in cases where you've actually had symptoms and you've gone to the hospital, done a test, and you're waiting for the response to come in, What stops, I mean, why shouldn't I self-medicate when I am so afraid that in that period, maybe by the time the results come, I'll be dead?
Yeah, so basically you are stressing the point I made. A number of these labs, actually majority of these labs, are not hospitals. You see, the impression given that you've gone to the lab and therefore you have a doctor is not true. If I walked into Noguchi tomorrow, Noguchi is not a hospital. None of the labs, apart from the ones that are linked to hospital, like you have the public health there's a lab in Kolebu or the one linked to Nyaho Medical Center. Now, when you go test, and that's the point I'm making, and you have symptoms, you are allowed to seek for care. I have a suspected case. In actual fact, we have multiple people who are admitted in hospital as we speak now, who are suspected, whose results haven't come in.
So you can
but
get
the
treatment.
Problem is most people, yeah.
So you can seek for treatment without when the results haven't come yet.
Yes, you can. The easier way for a lot of people they are just calling their friends who are doctors and then asking, what should I get? Now, what I'm saying is that you can actually seek for treatment in a medical facility or through the numbers that were the rapid response numbers. What else have we done about that? The regions and the districts. Every single district health management team is responsible for the cases, whether mild or moderate, in their catchment area. So what it means is that if you're living in Ayawasu West, for example, or you're living in that east, your health management team is allowed to reach out to you. And that is what we're asking, that the labs link the tests to their districts. That is what the system is supposed to be. So I was actually upset that Mr. Jackson was called or sent an email or text message to say you are positive.
Dr. Chris,
the accurate way of doing
Dr. Chris, you said there's a way the system is supposed to work, but is it working like that?
Yes.
Is that how it's working?
You see, the problem is sometimes we make it look as if the system is an entity that is devoid of the rest of us. We are part of the system. We are going to have to help the system work. The system is just like saying government or saying the country. We are all part of the system. The system is not only the source of care, it includes also the receiver of care. It includes the intermediaries in between them. Part of the big problem with pandemic is that there is always an anxiety, and that anxiety pushes to try to jump or circumvent the system. But it's not because one part of that system decides not to work. And that's the point I was making. These lab results should actually have gone through the district team, and the district team should have been the one contacting the clients and also provide support for them, both psychosocial and all that, because it's not easy to just open an email and see positive for COVID. You could have somebody collapse.
Let's speak to Joe Jackson briefly for clarification on that. But you see, the point I was trying to make here is the care receiver at this point is quite vulnerable. And it behoves the system to be able to make that linkage on behalf of the receiver. The receiver has already presented himself to the system. Now, the system has to ensure that there is a smooth channel that gives the best care. But
I want to make an intervention here.
Please do.
I walked to Leding Lab in East Legon and requested a COVID test. It's a private lab. They gave me multiple options. One including it will take up to 48 hours. I chose that option because it was a cost issue.
Okay.
And I chose that option. Now, Doc, I want to say this clearly. I paid them and they sent me my results. That's fine. Then, to be fair to them, to the Tema, I live in Tema. The Tema Central District team called me.
Okay.
Called me. There was a lady called Priscilla who called me, who says we've seen on the database that you live in Tema, that you've gotten COVID. What are your symptoms? What are you doing? And assigned me to a doctor. I must say clearly that the Tema, I was really impressed with the response of the Tema District Central Committee. Then I was assigned a doctor who now called me and took me through, asked me, and I must say, the lady asked me, who are your contacts? Have they tested?
So they tried to trace your contacts.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. So let's not really. I don't want it to seem as if nothing was done or the system. In fact, my experience of the system has been actually much better than I expected. In addition, the doctor now came to check me out at home.
The doctor came to your house?
On Monday. Yes.
Was this a paid service? Did you pay the doctor?
No, okay. I didn't pay the doctor a single penny, and I haven't paid him. Dr. Yali, a young man who did extremely well. I haven't no money as exchange hands. Then he looked at my condition, and then he said, "We've got to get you into hospital because you are at high risk, and I don't like the way you're breathing, and I don't like your oxygen levels. So get into hospital." Now, at that point, he now starts to make calls to find me a bed in a hospital. Let's be clear that, and I'm talking about my experience.
Your personal experience, yes. But did you get a bed? How?
Yes. I got a bed. It took some intervention. In the end, when I got a bed, the room was not comfortable because but it was at IMA, and it was a private institution, and I chose knowing that I will pay for it. But at that moment, of course, when you are at that point where the doctor says you are at risk, you are diabetic, you've got high blood pressure, you've got a history of heart disease, your blood pressure had spiked crazily, we've got to get you into hospital. So you're saying, and I went into hospital.
So when you went into hospital, you're saying that you paid for the facility's treatment?
Yes, it was a private facility. To be fair, they even discussed with me the cost of treatment, the expected cost, the deposits I had to make. And say, are you willing
so what
to
I
go
want
ahead?
To know is
and
why
I said yes.
What I want to know here is why didn't you get a government facility? Was there a reason why you couldn't get into a government facility?
Well,
and secondly, if you don't mind sharing the cost range.
Well, the government facilities are full. Listen, the government facilities are full. It's difficult to get a bed there. 2, I live in Tema, and I was offered 37 Ghana East, and I thought of the strain on my family looking after me whilst I was in hospital, and I chose, and I'm blessed to be able to afford it. It's a blessing. And I said I will go into IMA, the International Maritime Authority Hospital in Tema. It was a choice I made because I'm blessed to be able to afford it. But the system actually, congratulations, doctor, the system worked.
Mr. Jackson,
are
you comfortable?
I
think doctors' whole point has been, to appreciate the system for the effort that it's putting in.
No, I'm not saying the system is perfect, but I can only speak from my own experience.
Your singular experience.
And my own interaction with the Tema district team. And what happened? Listen, I went into hospital. It was a scary experience. It was a difficult experience, but I saw professionals working, sometimes with limited PPEs, but in close contact. And I am grateful. I am grateful.
Mr. Jackson.
I know that not everybody's experience has been the same.
Yes.
I know I have relatives who have died from COVID. But my own experience is a good one. It may not be representative of all the experiences.
Yeah, it might not exactly be reflective
of the one I can talk about.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson, I'm going to come back to you in a bit, but I just want to find out from the other survivor, Madam Eliza, What was your experience with the system? Mr. Jackson is saying, well, the district team contacted him. A doctor came to see him at no cost. He was he elected to go into a specific medical facility. Did you have these options? Eliza, if you
No,
could.
in
Yes.
fact, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
So after I had tested positive, the doctor advised that I isolate.
Okay.
I should go home and isolate. And that's what I did. Nobody contacted me. I wasn't given any special treatment, nothing.
So there was no further contact with the medical team in your district?
No.
Right. At the end, did you get any new prescriptions when your positive results came in? Or did you continue with the old medicine?
I was only given more antibiotics and vitamins. And also they told me they think I'm asthmatic. Am I getting the name right?
What does that mean?
Asymptomatic, sorry.
Okay.
And so it's not so dangerous, so I should just go home and isolate.
So your main symptom
Since I
was the
wasn't
loss
showing
of smell?
Yeah, and some slight headache.
Okay, now let me just go to Doc for his reaction on that. Doc, it seems the treatment that Mr. Jackson got is different from what other people get. Where does this disparity come in?
All right, so first of all, let me say that the treatment it's not different. It is actually the interpretation of the treatment. And that was what I tried to explain, that there is a system, and that system does work. Is the system perfect, as he said? No, and I'm very quick to say it is not. Our health system has never been this threatened or challenged as it is now by this pandemic. So let's have that clear. That is the reason we see in other countries health systems that were far more robust than ours come crumbling. So we are not expecting a perfect system. We are not expecting a system that has no flaws. There are flaws in the system, but the system works. Now, and that is part of the reason why we say that tests in designated centers, the designated centers are lots more now. The test may take a few days to come. Yes, sometimes it takes up to a week. Again, depending on the load that is going to that center. Now, when that comes, that we have a system that basically, without even the center that did the test saying, oh, I am giving it to your district, it automatically logs you onto your district. It automatically logs you onto your phone number, the address that you provided. And these are requirements for anybody who goes to test in all the designated areas. So the district picks it up, just like Mr. Jackson, without even contacting Leiden. Leiden had no clue because it is the same system all of us are using. So my tests are coming to me through our district because the patient logged that he stays in Ga East. Now, when our Ga East team picks this up, they will reach out to the patient and they will go through a questionnaire on the phone. The idea of the questionnaire is to try to classify the patient as to whether this is a mild, a moderate, or a severe or even critical case. Obviously, for our guideline, and which is similar to guideline everywhere in the WHO, for those who are mild, which include those who are symptomatic, we do not bring them into hospital. Okay. Remember that the hospital is also a risk for other people. We reach out to them and then tell them what they need to do. That includes isolation. That includes the basic supplements that mentioned, and depending on the person's risk factors, it may include antibiotics like the azithromycin or doxycycline. And ability to reach out to these people if there is any escalation of your signs or symptoms that you are having. For those who definitely have comorbid conditions or those who are more severe disease, it is even not only linked to the district, it's linked to our national dashboard, which I'm the administrator of. And I would not have mentioned it until Mr. Jackson mentioned it, because his name dropped on my dashboard on this phone. And I knew he went to IMA.
Okay.
Because we work with all those facility leads and the coordinator for the region to determine what is the patient's problems. If this is a patient who has, let's say, kidney issues and is requiring dialysis, we obviously are not going to send this patient to a center that has no ability to dialyze. What it means is sometimes the center with ability to dialyze may be full. It's not limitless space, and therefore we may have to hold that person in another center, getting appropriate care, or even transport to go have dialysis for the other center. So, and all the facility leads for case management for treatment are on this dashboard, and we basically discuss on a daily basis. And this morning, I actually mentioned to a call that around this time, the cases will be dropped on my dashboard. And I can tell you, not less than 10 cases today already have dropped into the dashboard. My colleagues are looking at that dashboard, looking at where there are openings to move these patients. I wish I have a mild disease and not have to come to hospital and have to isolate at home. I would prefer that. If I had
so
COVID,
Dr. Chris,
I pray I don't get COVID.
essentially you're saying that the responses they received were appropriate to their risk level.
Exactly.
Now, I'm going to also ask, you mentioned some emergency lines earlier. I would be very glad if we could roll those lines. If you have them, we can take them. If you don't, the producers will just get those lines so the public can know those lines. Now, Dr. Chris, what we notice is that when the government takes over, clearly the cost is mitigated for the patient. But the challenge here is that government is not able to absorb everyone. But is there any form of assistance to the private facilities that have to take in people so the cost doesn't unnecessarily escalate? Because if government took over, the cost would be lower. But since we are not able to absorb them, they necessarily have to, opt to go into private facilities. How is there, is there any channel, is there any assistance that works for this?
Yeah. So there are assistance to the private facilities. Obviously, that cannot would never be enough. Okay, the major private facilities that had to help in the pandemic effort have actually incurred quite significant loss in most of them. I must say, although this cost, especially when you have to end up in intensive care, may sound steep, the care or the facilities that are used, most of these facilities are actually running at discounted cost, not reaping their full cost. The cost of PPEs, which, yes, some of them may have gotten donations of PPEs, both from government and other agencies, but significantly, a lot of the private facilities still have to buy some or most of their PPEs. And then the medications they have to use, depending on the patient's health condition. Remember that for those who are severe and critical, we are not just treating COVID alone. We are treating critical illness. Issues, yes. So most of them prior to COVID would be done. And some of these are expensive. I'll give you an example. The estimated cost as at 4 years ago, if I were to rate the cost of treating ICU patients fully in Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, was between 4,500 Ghana cedis to 5,000 cedis a day. Obviously, no government is going to allow us charge that in a public hospital. It means that critical care does not make profits. So yes, it is expensive. I know I can't tell you from the top of my head what amount of support is given by government to the private facilities, but I know that there are, to some extent, some minimal support to them.
So you're saying the high cost of receiving treatment is usually because there are other factors that are part of the case instead of, just COVID?
Yes. For example, the cost of oxygen. I can tell you that the cost of oxygen a day is approaching 1,000 Ghana cedis. If you are on high flow oxygen, if you're on ventilator, that is even higher. Some of the antibiotics that are used for those who are very ill, and I'm not even talking about COVID-specific medications, such as meropenem or rosafen, are costing in excess of 1,000 to 200 cedis a day. There are other medications the patient may be on, and if they have comorbid conditions that have to be managed, there are costs to that. This is aside the consumables that are used, the ICU-specific consumables and things like that. So it is expensive to treat critical care. I can tell you that because I've been doing that for more than 10 years. Extremely expensive.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Now, Mr. Jackson, what was the period of time it took for you to recover? And was there any post-recovery treatment? Also, we've heard a lot about people experiencing some symptoms way after they have recovered. Do you feel fully recovered?
No, I don't feel fully recovered. I'm actually just, I'm even yet to take a second test to prove negative. But the doctors assure me that I can start de-isolating. At the moment, I'm still isolating. The biggest challenge I have is the extreme levels of fatigue. If I leave my desk and walk to the washroom and to take a pee and come back, I'm out of breath. Even talking can be
strenuous.
If I talk too passionately, and as you can tell, I'm a very I will run out of breath.
Oh,
so that I suspect I don't know how this is going to last because I'm still in the recovery phase, but I suspect it's not going to disappear overnight. And that is it. And I tell you, nobody should take this COVID issues for granted. Please, it's a serious disease. If you are blessed like Eliza Kofi is and you are asymptomatic, that's good. But you have loved ones and older persons and family who may not be as blessed. Eliza talked about her experience where she had to take care of her parent. So please, let's take this seriously. My message is, please wear your mask. And social distancing is still the only way I know of, because there's still no cure. The vaccines are not here yet. And so whatever happens, social distance. We like to take loopholes and say, maybe they say we shouldn't have a wedding, but I can go to church. Please, limit your exposure. This disease is evil.
Mr. Jackson,
don't go through it.
We also know that some people have reported complications after COVID, other health complications. Have you been checked to ensure that you haven't developed any other complications?
I suspect that that's going to be a long-term thing. And that some of the damage that COVID will do to our bodies, we're going to be finding out in the months and years ahead. I've heard a doctor say that we haven't plumbed the depths of COVID yet, and that we should expect that some of the damage we are seeing will only start to surface even with asymptomatic persons, and that's not to scare you, Eliza, over the next months and maybe even years. So at this moment, all I know is that I'm a COVID survivor. That puts me at risk, and I'm going to be very careful with my life going forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. Unfortunately, this is quite an interesting disease. I mean, sometimes you will isolate, you will social distance, follow most of the protocols, and unfortunately, you just may still end up with the disease. But what it's teaching us is that our health system has to consistently innovate to be able to tackle some of these challenges. Now, Mr. Joe Jackson is a survivor. He's also the CEO of Dalex Finance. We're also speaking to Eliza, who is based in Kumasi. Eliza Kofi is also a survivor. Now, Eliza, quickly, we know that you were classified as asymptomatic, but was there any contact tracing done by the facility or somebody else coming in later? And do you presently feel fully recovered, or do you still experience, Mr. Joe Jackson mentioned he experiences some high levels of fatigue. Do you have any remnants of symptoms?
There wasn't any follow-up. They only asked if I had someone at home, and I told them we live alone. So I think it ended from there.
Okay.
And I don't have any symptoms. I don't get tired. I think I'm strong. I'm nothing. I'm okay. Except my parents are always tired. They are still home even though they've tested negative. They are still home so tired. They can't even drive anymore. They can't do anything. I still have to be there for them. Yes.
Thank you so much. I see clearly it affects. My apologies. So clearly it affects people in different degrees. Dr. Chris, does anyone ever fully recover from COVID?
At the moment, we don't really know. It's been basically almost a year, as Mr. Jackson, and yes, that was a powerful advocacy from Mr. Jackson. I could not have done that better than he did. I want to say thank you to him. Yes, so this is basically a pandemic still rolling on. There's still a lot we're learning about this. You've heard there are multiple variants that we are getting. The variant that is basically not basically hitting people now, a new variant that we did not have earlier on, and they are spreading even worse than the earlier and more virulent than the earlier. As we speak now, there are no less than 7 variants. What does this different variant do and what system they attack, we would get to know as the months and years go by. But people do recover, and most people who survive do recover enough to be productive. It does take months, especially for those who ended up in ICUs or critical care. For some of them, it becomes actually frustrating if a month and a half after you have come home, you are still struggling to execute the daily chores of your life. But let me just say to them, and Eliza, and that goes towards your parents, that it's a slow process. It's a progressive, slow process. But positivity helps. And then pacing yourself, not trying to push yourself beyond what your body can take. Because when you do that, actually you could basically get yourself more ill than earlier and take longer, and that becomes even more frustrating. As I said, if at the beginning of this pandemic, we didn't even know we needed to have a post-COVID clinic because we didn't know there was going to be anything called post-COVID. So now centers are beginning to create clinics. We have a post-COVID clinic at GA East, and it's not only for our patients who were cared for in either the infectious disease center or GA East Municipal Hospital, but even for other people who have survived COVID and who who have problems that are persistent. They are allowed to come to our post-COVID clinic. At the moment, our post-COVID clinic is running every day from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we are also encouraging other facilities. It takes manpower, it takes resources. So it may take a while for other facilities to be able to establish post-COVID clinic, even find a space to do that. But yes, we are happy to support or help those who are recovering from COVID. The psychological aspect is extremely important. These are people who have come very close to dying. Some of them have not dealt with the trauma of seeing patients die beside them or coming so close and then just surviving by just a tiny whisker. So that again is one of the things we offer in our post-COVID clinic. It's not just to assess you physically. We have clinical psychologists who work with us in the post-COVID clinic, who assess and support these patients to do better. But it takes time. We do not know fully how long it has.
Dr. Chris, I'm glad that you mentioned psychologists and all that, because I was just going to ask you about the mental health effect of COVID-19. There are people who haven't even been infected by COVID, but they have extreme anxiety because people around them, they have probably seen people die or heard of people die. They have seen the impact on other people, and they're just petrified. Now, when we talk about the post-COVID care, how does a person qualify for the post-COVID clinic? How do you even know that you have post-COVID complications? Is there any process of testing after you've been cleared of the virus? Or can you just walk in there when you suspect that there's a problem and be attended to?
All right, so let me quickly say that as I mentioned earlier on, post-COVID care is still in its infancy in every country. In our country, most facilities are yet to even be able to set that up properly. So let me not pretend that it is available in every facility that is taking care of COVID patients. No, it is not. It means putting together the human resource and material resources that are required for that.
Doc, how many of these facilities do we have, if you don't mind?
It will be difficult for me to exactly say from the top of my head, but we have a post-COVID clinic. Kolebu does. Rich Hospital, I think, is setting up a post-COVID clinic. Most of the major hospitals, again, by virtue of having maybe more doctors and then physicians in their hospital, it is easier for them to set up a post-COVID clinic. Now, what qualifies somebody for post-COVID clinic? Everybody who has had COVID, actually, if it is the system was more robust, it's supposed to be seen before they are discharged from care. So even for Eliza, ideally, at the time that she's deemed, because she did not have symptoms, at the 14 days, where she's deemed to have been discharged from care, what we would have expected or what would have wanted done is that she actually comes to a clinic in her district that takes care of COVID, where they will assess her and then say, truly you are well enough, and then you could take care of yourself. Are there problems that can happen after that? Yes, but that problem goes to a normal hospital. The fact that you had COVID does not mean you cannot have other illnesses requiring you to go to normal hospital. Of course, we do not want a stigma to stick to people. So we're not going to say that those who have had COVID should continue to come only to a post-COVID clinic a year, 6 months beyond their care when they have other conditions. They're reintegrated back to general care of their choice or their availability. But what the post-COVID clinic tries to do is that period of 2 weeks to usually a month, 3 months post-infection, that we are able to pick problems that may come up and assist the patient take care of it. Yeah, so as I said, our post-COVID clinics do not only look after those who we took care of during their illness. So people around Ga East who may have been taken care of in other facilities that do not have post-COVID clinic regularly come into our post-COVID clinic, register, and they are cared for.
Thank you, Doc. That's a lot of insight. I'm going to go to Eliza for her closing remarks. We have barely 2 minutes left. Then I'm going to come to you for a wrap-up of how we should care for ourselves, even before whether we get COVID or not. Now, Eliza, do you have any closing remarks about your experience?
What I would say is that we should all be really careful. Most of the times we get so comfortable with our families, our friends, our work colleagues, we forget to put on our masks. Right now I'm in the office and I don't want to even take any chance. So we shouldn't be so comfortable with our friends and our families. We should always follow the protocol and wash our hands, use our sanitizers, and always use our nose mask.
Thank you
Yes.
so much, Madam Eliza Kofi. She's in Kumasi and she's a COVID survivor. Her parents were also infected. They're presently doing well, but they experienced way more symptoms than she did. We still have Dr. Chris Owu on the line. Dr. Chris.
Yeah, so I would want to say, and then just reiterate what Liza said, the protocols, yes, you would have heard people say they've been very careful and they still got infected. It is how very transmissible this disease is, but you can do as well as you can, and that means the protocols, masking up, avoiding gatherings, hand washing, use of your hand hygiene sanitizers, and all that. We have said that work areas and families are the main focus of infection at the moment, because those are the places where we bring down our guard. The weddings, the family parties, the birthday parties, the funerals, and of course, eating together at work. So we need to look at those environments. There are where the infections are spreading quite massively.
Thank you
Not
so
when
much.
you're walking. Yes.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Dr. Chris Owu. You have been a fantastic resource. We are grateful for your time. We are grateful for your knowledge and all the information that you have shared. Thank you to Eliza Kofi, a COVID survivor from Kumasi, and Mr. Joe Jackson, CEO of Dalex Finance, also a COVID survivor. Thank you for staying with us through this edition of Spotlight. We hope that you were able to pick up some information to arm yourself with, and we hope that we enlightened you to some extent. Dr. Chris Owu is head of ICU at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital and the Ghana Infectious Disease Control Center, and I am Nuong Falong. Thank you. Good evening.